This is an apron. If you work in theater, you're gonna need one of these. Absolutely, positively, 100%, you're gonna need one of these. Not quite sure why they call it an apron because it doesn't really do much to protect you from, I don't know, splatters or spills or something. I am an IATSE member, which is the union of people that work backstage on film, television, theater. And before the pandemic hit, I worked on Hamilton before it closed in Chicago. I've already told you in my other video what you need to have in your kit that you keep at the theater. This is what you're gonna have on your person during a show. Baby Marie Antoinette. Your apron should be a dark color. I made mine. It's out of like a stretchy jean material, and I just have these little ties that would just wrap around my waist. Some people have aprons that are more like a gardening kind of a thing, or some people wear like a fanny pack and then it maybe has like a quick release, but this worked just fine for me all the time that I worked on Hamilton. So I'm going to talk about the things that you might find in dresser's apron. The first thing that you'll see is that we always keep safety pins, and I talked about safety pins in my last video on what to keep in your kit. These come in handy in a variety of ways. I've seen people have to pin up an entire like inner leg seam. It's not ideal, but it's gonna make people not be showing their delicate parts to the audience. So you should always have those with you. On certain shows, you might keep a needle and a thread, but at Hamilton, I didn't. There were different places backstage at Hamilton where there were threaded needles if you needed one, but I never felt comfortable just keeping one on myself. If we move to the other side, there's a pen and a pencil. A mechanical pencil is just a better option because you don't have to find a pencil sharpener. I take my notes with pencil. Things were changing sometimes with my notes that I had, and I never wanted to write them in pen because that just seems silly to me to have like a bunch of chicken scratches. I would much rather be able to erase it. So in my first pocket, way over on this side, scissors. These are not sewing scissors, they're just like a craft scissor. They're really cute though. I prefer to have a seam ripper, and I just like how small it is, and I like that it flips together. This is like the side, like it's smaller than a lighter. I felt like this was a safer option for me. Maybe I'm just terribly accident prone. Chopsticks for whoever I happened to be helping that night. This was definitely a must, especially in the winter months. It gets crazy cold and crazy dry here in Chicago. So I talked about having my headlamp, which is always on my person, and I didn't wear it on my head. I always put it around my neck, tighten it up. And then what I liked about this particular brand is that this light flips out. So depending on if you're like, you need the light to shine out at another person, like if you're buttoning a coat, you can have it, or if you need to flip it down and you're looking at your notes. There's two things that I could not do a show with, and this is one of them. You absolutely have to have a headlamp. There are some people that would do it without it, and I'm like, maybe they have bionic eyes, maybe I'm old. It's a Petzl Taquina. And I think we just got this at REI or something. I'm sure you could get it on Amazon. There are these little things called bite lights. I started using one on Hamilton. I found that I was giving myself like severe dental problems. I was just like, I'm literally gonna break my teeth trying to chomp on this because I would just get so tense. So that's when I switched to having a headlamp, and then I didn't have to like put the bite light in my mouth and chomp on it and then not be able to communicate with whoever I was dressing, or if I was helping somebody else, there was no way for us to communicate because I was chomping on a bite light. The other thing that you absolutely cannot live without if you are a swing is your notes. The Burr Washington track, and this one I did quite often, so you can see it's very well loved. And I would always write, what the show was, what the track was, and then who I was dressing, and then I always wrote my name at the bottom, and then I wrote the first time that I wrote the notes essentially. All of my changes are in this little notebook, and it was small enough that it would just slide right in that pocket. It's just like a perfect fit. I could just grab it really fast. So I keep it open to the page, that the part of the show that I was on, and then I would just stick it back in its pocket. It was just ready to pull out whenever I needed it. This pocket, typically I would keep things that were special things depending on which actor I was working with that night. You might keep, you know, a tissue. There were some people that liked to have like nasal spray, throat spray. Sometimes there's these cool little portable like personal steamers, or sometimes there's ones that you plug in, but that you might just kind of have to like drag around with you. So that's what I would keep usually in this little guy. Your shoehorn. They had them at Hamilton and they just had them for you to use, and they had them like hanging everywhere backstage, but I preferred to keep my own. The one other thing that I keep on me at all time is my Lucky Charm, which is a guitar pick. And when I was working Heartbreak Hotel, I was dressing Elvis and I had my pockets stuffed with so many picks because he was playing guitar most of the show. And I never had a giant mess up on that show, and I always had a pick on me. So when I transferred to Hamilton, I found a pick, and I was always nervous that I was gonna mess up, especially at the beginning, and my Lucky Charm never let me down. So I always keep my lucky guitar pick in my apron. Just hairpins, like bobby pins. And these were for myself. It was never for like other people. Like there was a wig person and a hair and makeup person to do that. I have like a wayward broken button. Those are actually things that are really, it's actually smart to collect those, because the red coats or whatever like buttons were always falling off those, because there's hundreds of buttons and they're used in a really active time during the show. You know, you'd always have to check those after every time that they were worn. If you found the button and you saved it and you put it in your apron, then you were able to pull it out later and say, hey, dresser of this particular person, I found this button, and then they can be like, oh sweet, thanks. Sometimes this was classic me, where I knew that I needed a button for, you know, let's say Lafayette's coat or whatever, his velvet coat, and I would like look at the coat and I would be like, okay, I know I need a button for this coat. I would go traipse from backstage all the way downstairs, and I would dig through all his buttons and I would not be able to find it, and I would be like, this is making me insane. And then I would go back upstairs and I would like look at the button and I would be like, I'm looking for something completely different. Like my mind would just get spaced out. So even if the button was broken, if you have that like actual button that you can compare, instead of having to like go back and forth, it's just a good idea to keep a couple spare like parchment vest buttons or the officer coat buttons, because you know, if you have a couple minutes, you can fix it backstage. A comb, this was especially helpful for Elvis. We were completely, you know, taking everything he was wearing off and putting everything back on. If his hair got a little messed up, we had a little mirror. And this is mine actually. I would never keep this. It'd just be like those little plastic, you know, those little small plastic. On Hamilton, hair was somebody else's jurisdiction, but you know, depending on the show, depending on the hair, there might be an actor that likes to have one, or I don't know, maybe their mustache gets a little crazy. I think the biggest thing is like communication with your actor and just saying like, what do you want me to have? Like, what would make you feel comfortable to do your best? Chew gum. That's what I keep in my apron. If you're new to my channel, like this video, subscribe, and comment down below. Tell me if you work in theater. Depending on the show, there's a lot of different things that you might need. After I worked once on this island, I think that I collected a lot of sand. Anyways, thanks for watching.